There's a lot to unpack here. I do want to bring in Will Pomeranz, the director of the Kennan Institute here. He does join us live to help break down a little bit more about this ongoing case. And this is a big topic right here on social media. Thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Your thoughts on hearing that Brittney Griner has been traded for the man known as the Merchant of Death?
Well, I think that was the only deal that was on the table. I know that President Biden had talked about a 2-for-2 swap, but clearly that was too difficult. And so Brittney Griner is coming home, but Paul Whelan, unfortunately, remains in Russian prison.
Do you think, because we did hear a lot about Paul Whelan and the fact that people wanted him to come home, that's what a lot of the tweets are about today. Do you think that's, at this point, going to happen anytime soon?
Unfortunately not. I think this was the best chance. The exchange with Brittney Griner was the best chance to get Paul Whelan home. Unfortunately, he was not part of the deal, and therefore a different negotiation will have to take place, and it will not be as urgent for President Biden, I think, and clearly it will not be as important for Vladimir Putin. So I don't think that Paul Whelan release is imminent, and unfortunately, I think he will spend some more time in Russian prison.
What do you think happens next for Brittney Griner? We did hear, of course, that she is going to head back here to the U.S., and that's going to happen, Biden said, within the next 24 hours or so. What do you think is next for her?
I think she is able to do anything that she wants to do. I don't think that she will be going back to Russia to play basketball anytime soon, but I think, she will be free. She will be able to enjoy her life with her family. And so I think that she will be able to pursue whatever she wants to pursue going forward. Clearly, it will be a very difficult experience. It will take a long time to recover because Russian prison is very, very difficult. It's a very difficult place to be. So obviously there will be certain psychological aspects she will have to go through. But I think that she will be free and she will be able to do what she wants to do in the United States.
And you mentioned the psychological aspects there. We know it can't be easy, and she was sent to a penal colony. I don't know exactly how that differs there from a prison, but it's got to be a pretty, difficult time is probably an understatement to be there.
Yes, it is very isolated. It is outside of Moscow. Clearly, she didn't have any sort of people who were visiting her other than people from the U.S. Embassy and occasionally her teammates. But I think that it will take a long time to recover the ordeal, and not only the physical ordeal, but the psychological ordeal of being placed in Russian prison and actually having the possibility of a 9-year sentence. That will be just a very, very difficult element to overcome.
Do you think the reason that she was released first before Paul Whelan is because she is a celebrity and this has gotten so much attention?
Yes, obviously that this was a case that went to the top of the to-do list for President Biden. Clearly, this was what he was negotiating about. I think they wanted a 2-for-2 swap that included Paul Whelan, but for whatever reason, Vladimir Putin wasn't willing to do a 2-for-2 swap, and therefore this is the best that could be done in light of the circumstances. Clearly, we are not talking to Russia on a diplomatic front. We have imposed sanctions. We are obviously giving support to Ukraine. So clearly, this is a problem, a long-term problem, and Brittney Griner got stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's just kind of an ongoing situation here. We know that another prisoner from the U.S. was involved in a prisoner swap a bit earlier on this year. What do we know about that?
Well, there was a prisoner swap earlier this year, and it was negotiated, and it was a surprise because we didn't realize that the negotiations were even ongoing. In this case, we all knew about these negotiations. And quite frankly, President Putin had a lot of leverage in these negotiations because President Biden had made it such an important part of his initiative to get Brittney Griner home. So when he did that, he gave Putin some leverage in the negotiations. And clearly Putin was able to get his person home, Victor Bout, and basically not have to deal with a 2-for-2 swap.
What role do you think that celebrities coming out in support of Brittney Griner, Twitter right now, everyone's talking about this, what role do you think that played in Brittney Griner and this prisoner swap? It's been high profile. So many people have been paying such close attention to it.
I think it put pressure on President Biden. I don't think it put any pressure on President Putin. I don't think President Putin really understood who Brittney Griner was. I don't think he was very concerned about the case. There are lots of Russians who are in jail with severe sentences for not really committing serious offenses, indeed for just engaging in politics and opposition. So I don't think Putin was really swayed by the celebrity of this. I think that he realized that he could have some leverage. But clearly Putin didn't get a lot of what he wanted either. Clearly the sanctions remain. Clearly the United States is backing Ukraine to the hilt. I don't think this was a political win for President Putin. Indeed, I don't think it will be mentioned at all, really, in the Russian press.
It sounds like to me in the Russian court system, it's kind of set up to where there was no possibility that Brittney Griner was ever going to be, I guess, found not guilty, that she was going to receive a light sentence if she was found guilty. It just seems like it's kind of stacked against the, I guess, United States suspects that are there in court.
No, it's not just the United States suspects, it's all Russian suspects. Basically, there is less than a 1% acquittal rate in Russian criminal justice. So all Russians who actually come into contact with the criminal justice system, it is unlikely that they are going to be able to get off. There are reasons why they can potentially have plea bargaining and limited and less severe sentences, but no one wants to be caught up in the Russian criminal justice system. The chance of an acquittal is just minuscule.
All right, and you did mention, of course, it's very unlikely that we're going to see Brittney Griner go back to Russia to play basketball, ever. We know that she's going to come back here to the U.S., and there is, you kind of talked about this, but a mental aspect to it because she has been in that penal colony, she's been in the prison, so that has, of course, a psychological effect, right?
Absolutely. So I believe that Brittney Griner will need some very significant time to get over the ordeal of being in Russian prison and facing the prospect of a 9-year prison sentence. So this will not be an easy transition for Brittney Griner. Obviously, it will help now that she is with her family and friends, but she will obviously be impacted by this stint in a Russian prison, and anyone would.
So what role, I guess, does Vladimir Putin play in all of this? Is he the one who ultimately decides if she was going to be released or not? Is there someone lower than him that makes that decision, or is it all essentially up to him?
This was a decision made by Vladimir Putin. The negotiations and the deal could not have been made without Vladimir Putin's approval. There are no kind of secondary figures in the Russian government who have the authority to make such a transaction, especially because it had so many political consequences for the Russian Federation. So clearly it was a decision by Vladimir Putin. I don't know whether he thought that he will get something more because he has released Brittney Griner. My inclination is that he will not get anything more, and that the United States support for Ukraine will continue. The sanctions will continue the pariah status of the Russian Federation will continue. So I don't think that this will actually kind of come back to the benefits of Vladimir Putin, but it is a important statement for the Griner family, and obviously they will be relieved that she is back in the United States.
And this seems like an obvious question, but what role do you think the war in Ukraine was having on Putin not releasing Brittney Griner initially? Do you think she was found guilty and was kept there because, in part, the U.S. is continuing to support the Ukraine in that war?
I don't often go into Vladimir Putin's mind, but clearly I think he thought that there was some leverage to be gained in this war, and quite frankly, he didn't really gain any leverage. So whatever he thought could be gotten by keeping Brittney Griner in Russian custody, you know, it won't impact the war in Ukraine and the U.S. support for Ukraine. And indeed, President Putin just said yesterday that the war is going to last longer than he thought.
What do you think of Paul Whelan's brother coming out just moments ago and saying that he's happy that Brittney Griner got to be released? It is unfortunate for his family because they obviously want him released, but the fact that he and the family are showing support for Brittney Griner, what does that say? What does that mean to you?
It means that I think that they are trying to deal with the Biden administration, and they want to keep the goodwill of the Biden administration. And by being magnanimous in terms of the release of Brittney Griner, they simply support their cause and hopefully will lead to more negotiations to get Paul Whelan home as well.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to add before we let you go?
No, I think I've run the gambit, so I think it's just I'm very pleased for the Griner family. And clearly, the Whelan family will continue to advocate for his release as well.
For sure. Well, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.